this is a little bit more involved than some of the other questions that we've done before. Okay, so this is a two-part question. This is a typical question you may actually see in a math class, because they're going to try to trick you into doing some like average, like actual averaging, like this plus this over 2 or whatever. But it's going to be a little bit different here because you don't necessarily. Sorry, I had it on pan, not pen. So it's pen, not pan. So we're going to break this up into our two sections. Right, so part A. And if you read this, so a car travels at a constant speed for 50 meters per second for 10 seconds, and a constant 30 meters per second for 600 meters. Right? A, what is the total distance traveled? And B, what is the average velocity from start to end? Okay. So what you're going to do, in fact, for both parts, they give you half of the solution already. So for part A, they already give you how far it moves for kind of the second half of the trip, right? So they already give you how far for the second half. The only thing you need to do now is find how far does it move for the first part of the trip, right? So this is the 300 meters per second, 600 meters, okay? And then for the second part, they tell you that, or for the first part, they tell you it's 50 meters for 10 seconds. So if I take the equation, the equation is not for solve for x, it's solve for v, right? So we got v equals x over t. But if I want to find x, I got to do v times t. Okay? So we're just going to use the basic one, right? It doesn't give us an acceleration. We don't have to do that full necessary problem-solving strategy. So we're just going to do 50 times 10. I'll give this like a little subscript 1. So this will be subscript 2. Okay? And so that tells us for the first part of the trip that it travels 500 meters. So now how do we find the total? Well, we just add. So it's 500 meters plus 600 meters, which gives us 1,100 meters. Okay, so that's the distance traveled. Okay. Now you're going to need that number for part B. That's why we have to do part B first. But just like the part A, they actually give us a key piece of information already, so where we don't have to do any calculations. Okay. So for the first part of the trip, they tell us that it takes 10 seconds. All right. So they're traveling 500 meters in that 10 seconds. All right. Now, what we have to do is essentially the same type calculation, but instead of now solving that equation for velocity, or excuse me, for position or distance, we're going to solve it for time, which the solving is we're just going to flip the t and the v. So it's going to be t equals x over v. Now, this is where students get caught up, is that you want to automatically kind of just average the 50 and the 30. Say, oh, just say an average velocity. Well, I have 50 meters per second, I have 30 meters per second. Okay? And just say, okay, it's 40 meters per second. But you're going to see you can't do that. This is typical of SAT questions, right? These DRT questions on the SAT, this is very typical. They want you to try this and do the method of just, and I just have to add 50 and 30 divided by 2 because it tells me average. Okay? The thing about physics, and the thing you have to get out of your head for physics, is that the word average does not mean a straight average. It means total trip. Okay? It is not, add up and divide by 2 or add up, divide by 3, however many average velocities or parts of the trip you have. Okay? So once we come in here and do this x over v, so it's going to be now our 600 divided by 30, and so the second part of the trip takes 20 seconds, right? So now to find the average velocity for the entire trip, right, we're going to take our total distance, which we found over in part A, and divide it by our total time. Well, our total time is going to be 10 seconds plus 20 seconds, which is 30 seconds. Okay? And now we do this division. It's going to be near 40, but it's not going to be 40. Okay? And that gives us an average velocity of 36.7 meters per second. Okay? Now, if it does say velocity, we should put a plus. If a sign is not given to you, always assume positive, right? Physics is one of the most positive sciences because we're always making assumptions that things are positive.